Sending your child to school is a big thing here in the United States. It's a very American thing. Can you imagine how it felt to parents and to children during the civil rights moment when America was changing? The idealized vision had changed. In this video, I want to focus on integration in the small town of Aledo, Texas. Here today I'm at Aledo Middle School, which was in 1965 Aledo High School, the only high school in the district. Now the high school is growing so much that they're looking on task to potentially in the future even build a second one. The tiny town is booming, but in 1965 Aledo was a quiet place. Aledo also had very few families of color. In 1965 those family of colors came right here to this school when it was the high school and integrated relatively peacefully. Now, of course, there were challenges. Of course, there were areas of concern. Of course, I'm sure there were frustrations all around and many cases of racial tension. However, Aledo was no Mansfield. Aledo was no Little Rock. Aledo had something about its integration that marked it as unique in the state of Texas. Chief Justice Earl Warren wrote this in the majority opinion for the Brown versus Board of Education case. Today, education is perhaps the most important function of state and local governments. It is required in the performance of our most basic public responsibilities, even service in the armed forces. It is the very foundation of a good citizenship. He goes on to say that we conclude that in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. The building behind me was recently renovated. When I taught here a few years ago, the renovation began. They did a wonderful job making it a beautiful building and modern school. But you still can't hide the heart of the building, which was an old high school. So in 1965 September, there were 9 black children here in Aledo that integrated. There were only 9 of them. They were scattered among the grade levels. I had the pleasure of interviewing Jeff Brazel, who was one of those 9 children who began his, I believe, 5th grade year here in Aledo in 1965. Mr. Brazel was very generous to allow me to take photos of his 1970 sophomore yearbook. You can see his photo there in the top left. He is the only African-American student in their graduating class. It was a small graduating class. Many of these people kept in touch throughout the years. They had class reunions. Bill Paxton, the actor, he was also in that class. See his picture there on the bottom right. A really unique story about a unique group of kids that had very fond memories of their time together in high school. I don't know why, but I really do feel like it should give me some extra credit that the man who was in Tombstone went to school with the subject of my interview. Just saying, maybe that should give me some extra points somewhere because I'm sorry, but that's just really cool history. This photo, also supplied to me by Mr. Brazel, is of Roger Trischel, who graduated in 1970. He was a library assistant. He was an outstanding student in history. He played football. He ran track. This kid had a very, very active career at Aledo High. He was not the first to graduate. The first African-American to graduate from Aledo. That honor would belong to Deborah Dewhurst in 1968. So that'd be 2 academic years after integration. But he is a good example of the success and the leadership that black students could have in Aledo in the 1960s.
Some days you wake up and nothing works, you feel surrounded. Gotta give your feet some gravity to get you grounded. Keep good things inside your ears just like.
Out of all the pages that Mr. Brazel allowed me to photograph, this page is by far the most personally impactful. On this page, I see Maddie Coder, I see Miss Vandergriff, and Carol Stewart at the bottom. All 3 of these ladies now have elementary schools named after them. The teachers who made integration possible are the ones who have become heroes in our town. I love Aledo. I've taught there for a number of years, and I feel like in a way that I, as a teacher, have inherited their hard work. They're the ones who made this possible, who made integration possible. Now, if you can imagine, the building was red bricked just as it was today. They kept the historical aesthetic. Imagine your child walking in, riding a bus with their friends, their neighbors for the first time, going into a school, all white teachers, and asking them to teach your child to embrace his culture, to embrace his way of learning, his style of learning. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be heartache. There's going to be pain. There's going to be incidents. But what's remarkable about Aledo is that according to my source, Jeff Brazell, he felt he was well educated, well treated by his teachers for the most part, and he has fond memories of his classmates. Aledo was for him, it is a good memory. Integration was a good memory for him.
Feel surrounded. Gotta give your feet some gravity to get you grounded. Keep good things inside your ears just like the waves and sound it. And just say whatever, cause there is no way you're drowned.
An important comparison needs to be analyzed. You see, there's another town not far from Aledo, honestly about 35 miles from Aledo. It's only a 40-minute drive today, called Mansfield, Texas. You might have heard of the Mansfield crisis in the fall of 1956. I'm not sure if it made national news, but it certainly made news all over the state of Texas, from Amarillo to Corpus Christi. The Amarillo newspaper reported that a large mob gathered outside of the school comprised of adults after the NAACP tried getting 4 black students to register for the fall 1956 semester. Now, as the children were going in to register, they hung an effigy over the school, and they also hung an effigy in the town as well. Racial tensions. The school was really a boiling point for these racial tensions. What were designed to be scare tactics, terror tactics, designed to intimidate these children from applying for classes, and it worked. The children registered. The NAACP dropped the lawsuit. So that happened in Mansfield in 1956. However, in 1965, both Mansfield and Aledo would integrate quietly at the same time. Now, my theory is that the leadership in Aledo at the time hesitated on integration in 1956 because of the same fears that other communities had in North Texas. Now, it is important to note that in the 1956, 57, 58, I believe it was something over 200 school districts had integrated successfully and peacefully. Now, I'm sure there were racist incidents. I'm sure there was problems and troubles, and all that is to be expected. However, there wasn't the armed violence that we saw in places like Mansfield or even in Alvarado, Texas, when students rose up to try to block their black neighbors from registering for classes in their in their high schools. So Aledo thankfully doesn't have this legacy. Maybe it would have if they tried to do this in 1956. I don't know. But in 1965, thankfully, Aledo did have a peaceful integration, whereas Mansfield very, very quietly integrated after the horrors of 1956. I don't know how I would have felt if I was one of the parents of those 9 children who integrated in 1965 and went to school with their neighbors. I don't know if I would have felt relieved or happy or scared or nervous or maybe a conclusion of all. And I'm sure that not all 9 of those children had the same experience. Some had a positive experience, some had a negative experience, some graduated, some didn't. But regardless, Aledo proved that in 1965, integration could be successful. It took a lot to get there, but when they were there, the town prospered.